On Friday, July 31st, Bill McKibben wrote that, quote, "There is no more contemptible company on earth than Shell Oil," end quote. For the week prior, incredible activists from 350 PDX, Greenpeace, Rising Tide, and others had blockaded an icebreaker ship on Shell's payroll, dangling from bridges to form a human curtain and clogging the ship's path with kayakers. McKibben wrote his words as the blockade ended and the icebreaker resumed course to assist Shell with drilling in the Arctic, a project that will go down in history as a moment of incredible stupidity and greed. If Shell and companies like it leave us a future where people can read and write history, that is. Those people who stood in the way are heroes, in the truest sense of the word, because Bill is right. They barred the path of an incredibly rich, incredibly powerful, and completely corrupt and contemptible company, a corporation for which the planet-defiling Arctic drilling project is just another escalation along a long history of unbelievable acts. This video is a quick primer on Shell and the things it's done that should cement its place as one of the vilest organizations in the history of the human race. Shell is the common name for Royal Dutch Shell, a multinational fossil fuel company incorporated in the UK, headquartered in the Netherlands, and operating in more than 70 countries. Shell has several subsidiaries including Shell Oil Company, Shell Canada Limited, Shell Nigeria, Pennzoil Quaker State, and others. In 2014, the company brought in $421 billion in revenues, and the company made roughly $14.7 billion in profit. Their CEO, Ben van Beurden, made $26 million for 2014. Now, Shell makes this money by selling products that wreck the planet. According to its latest annual report, the company produces more than 3 million barrels of oil equivalent per day, and each year they sell 24 million tons of liquefied natural gas. These products are significant drivers of climate change. Their use as fuel adds greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, trapping heat and raising global average temperatures. According to The Guardian, Royal Dutch Shell is responsible for putting 30.75 gigatons of carbon into the atmosphere. To put that in perspective, the US government estimates that a single ton of carbon emitted in 2015 costs $36 in economic damage. Now that doesn't sound like much, until you consider that Shell is responsible for 30 billion times that amount of carbon. Shell's crimes extend far beyond its impacts on climate change, however. In places where they extract oil from the ground, they have a well-earned reputation for environmental destruction, lawlessness, and corruption. Take, for example, their operations in Nigeria. Amnesty International reports that Shell was responsible for at least 204 oil spills on the Niger Delta last year alone. These spills wreck Nigerians' livelihood, food, and water sources. For decades, Shell has blamed the spills on sabotage and illegal refining, but recent court documents show that they knew for years that degraded pipes and equipment were putting the oil at risk for spillage, but failed to act to stop it. When local Nigerians stood up for themselves, Shell and its security personnel responded viciously, with methods including extrajudicial killings and torture. In one case, Shell agreed to pay $15.5 million to settle a legal action in which it was accused of having collaborated in the killing of Kensaro Wiwa and 8 other leaders of the Ogoni people in southern Nigeria.
The United Nations recognizes the rights of all the world's indigenous people. Indigenous people have been cheated through laws such as are operated in Nigeria today, through political marginalization. They have driven certain people to death. In recovering the money that has been stolen from us, I do not want any blood spilt. Not of an Ogoni man, not of any strangers amongst us. We are going to demand our rights peacefully, non-violently, and we shall win.
The plaintiffs alleged Shell conspired with the Nigerian military government to capture and kill the men, as well as supplying and helping to plan terror raids against villages. More broadly, a trove of confidential documents show that Shell regularly paid off Nigeria's military and police to put down protests against its polluting activities. Their corruption of the Nigerian government extended beyond the security forces. A diplomatic cable leaked by WikiLeaks showed Shell's top executive in Nigeria bragging that she had placed informants in every relevant department of the Nigerian government and knew everything that was being done in those ministries. Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International say oil companies, led by Shell, have overseen a human rights tragedy in Nigeria. Presumably, we can expect more of this exemplary behavior as they ramp up operations in the Arctic. This staggering level of immorality hasn't prevented Shell from being able to do business with the US government as a contractor, though. True to form, they're ripping us off, with $1.6 billion racked up in penalties for misconduct. Their offenses include false reimbursement claims for environmental cleanup, Clean Air Act violations, foreign bribery, human rights violations, price fixing, and violations of federal securities laws. Their continued ability to access taxpayer funds might be explained by the way they take advantage of campaign finance laws to participate in what some observers call legal bribery. Dutch Royal Shell has given $1.5 million to federal campaigns. Their US subsidiary, though, Shell Oil, has given much, much more. $2.6 million given to federal campaigns, with their top individual recipient being Barack Obama, whose administration recently approved the permits to allow Shell to drill in the Arctic. Shell's influence on the public discussion around climate change is just as pernicious as their influence in American politics. They back fossil fuel industry trade groups like the American Petroleum Institute and the Western States Petroleum Association, who intentionally mislead the public about the effects of fossil fuel emissions on the environment, even after the industry's own internal communications admitted that global warming and human emissions' effect on global warming are undeniable. Shell is also a member of the American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC, a group that serves as a conduit for half-baked climate denial arguments and policy proposals from industry backrooms to elected officials. Shell remains a member of ALEC even after other reputable companies like Google cut ties to the organization because, on climate, ALEC was, quote, just lying. Shell is a vile organization, corrupt to its core, willing to say or do anything to keep money flowing into the pockets of its executives. Cheating American taxpayers, running disinformation and propaganda campaigns, causing billions in economic damage to the US economy, even spying on governments, worsening armed conflicts, and risking planet-wide crisis. All these things lie within the range of acceptable activities to Shell's leadership, as long as they can profit from them. If Shell were a nation, we would be at war with them, because they are certainly at war with us. This video is dedicated to the incredibly brave people who stood in the way of Shell's activities in the Arctic and around the world. See the links in the description below to find out how you can support them financially. They need your help now more than ever.